Hello, family, and welcome to another episode of Role Model Makers Experts Cafe. I'm your host, Dr. El, the Parent Whisperer, and today with me, I have an amazing lady. She's been in our community and has delivered. She has a big heart, and I'm very happy that she was able to take time out of her busy day to be here. And thank you guys for tuning in as well. I want to introduce you guys to Ruthanne Warnick. I'm hoping that I say the name correctly.
You got it.
Awesome. So, Ruthanne, tell our audience members what you do, why you do it, and why this is something that should be on the family's radar, basically. And we'll go from there.
All right. Thank you so much. It's great to be here. I help families intentionally capture and share family stories and memories so that they can connect the generations of their family. So that's connecting those who we've already lost, possibly with the present generations and through us to future generations. And when my father passed away many years ago, and when I was about 40, I realized how many stories were lost with him, not just his own, but of my grandparents and family members before that. And I came to realize how easy it is for those stories to get lost and for them to literally become buried treasures with people when they pass away, instead of living treasures that can connect or continue from generation to generation. So that was probably the beginning of it for me. And then I started working on my own legacy work and became a certified guided autobiography instructor. And the more I learned and the more I did it myself for my own family, the more I realize how important it is to families that I spoke with, and how important it is for them to, again, intentionally capture those stories with the purpose of sharing them for the generations.
Absolutely. You actually, it's funny because earlier on today, I was talking about my grandfather being a poet, and I never saw him. But in my parents' dining area, there is a plaque with one of his poems there. And I always felt very spiritually connected with him. And every time I walk into that room, just seeing that poem is like a connection through time to somebody that is related to me, but I have never met. So, more to the power of what you're saying, that these words, these stories, and these are foundational. And I know you have a lot more to say about our connectivity, not just in our timeline, but also when you look back into how many generations back do you know really where you came from, things like that.
Yeah, and to that point, it's having that sense of belonging. So it is my personal fundamental belief that when we have a sense of belonging within our own family, right, then we are better able to create belonging in our communities and in our country and really in our world. But it begins with this essential connection within our own families. Yeah.
Actually, again, everything you say remind me of, because I'm big on legacy and legacy building, and everything that I'm doing right now is literally because my inspiration was my paternal grandpa, which is different than the one that I just mentioned earlier. And the fact that he was well known for being a great host and inviting all family, central and extended family, to be at his place. And to this day, they cite that people that are really old and they're like, I was a kid and I was at your grandpa's house all summer long. And that kind of really embodies what I think family is. And I want to make sure our community, our world is like that. But that came from his legacy. And if I didn't know that story, I wouldn't be here doing everything that I'm doing today.
Right.
So really,
Yeah,
really,
it is the interesting. I have found it interesting the different ways that we can connect even with someone we never met, but we know that we're connected to them in some way. And I will say that while we're talking about family and connection, that in the world today, the village that we used to have when families lived in close proximity, and you were not only with your parents, but your cousins, your extended family, your aunts and uncles, maybe you live near your grandparents. And so the opportunity to get those stories, even if they're just sort of anecdotally around the holiday table, but the ability to get the stories and also to develop that relationship with those family members is a little more scattered today. You know, people, we're just a mobile society. And so people live so far apart. And I intentionally use the word intentional to say that we have to really be intentional about capturing those stories and even creating the memories so that we have stories to share. It takes a different kind of effort, I'll say. Actually, I'll say it takes an effort as opposed to it just happening naturally when we live near each other. So.
Okay. Awesome. So first, to the point of understanding who you are and where you come from and your roots, basically, that's what keeps you grounded, right? I know neurologically that when you have a better sense of yourself, you have a better sense of empathy and empathizing and being able to connect to the world because you're grounded, and that is not going to dilute you. And those people who are not, they're subject to bullying and subject to pursuing wrong careers and all of those kind of things as well. So
And
this,
they're often searching for a belonging that can lead them to a less than ideal kind of belonging, right? You know, to groups that can lead them down a path, because they're, for some people, they are seeking that belonging that's missing at the, as I said, at the very kind of fundamental level.
right,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so now we are going to talk about intention. And so let's talk about some of the challenges, because obviously this is something that needs attention, and that means it needs intention, and that means it requires effort. So what are the challenges in this effort and intention part?
So there's a couple of challenges. One is the first of all, just basically the desire to do it and to have it. You have to have that desire, but time, it seems to be a problem for people that I have found. I don't have time. But with that, the flip side of that coin is that it's, if you didn't make the time, then you're left with the regret later. So again, the person has to want to have the stories, first of all, and then they have to want to set aside the time. But when I say set aside the time, I don't necessarily mean, okay, now I have to create this whole big project and it's like this enormous thing. Any of us can collect one story at a time, write down or capture one memory of a grandparent, a special person, one at a time, one conversation at a time, one question at a time. And I'll talk about it maybe ahead of time, but I have this free download that is 7 no-tech, low-tech ways to capture family stories starting today.
Cool.
And on the one hand, we communicate, we had that village previously in previous generations, but on the other hand, I should say, and on the other hand, today, when we don't have the physical proximity, we do have other tools that are literally at our disposal, right? Our phone, a Zoom conversation. We do have the opportunities, but if we're not intentional about it, they just slip away. So even in a conversation with, let's say you're doing a FaceTime or a Zoom time with a grandparent, it just takes a question to start a conversation. And if you're aware of it and you have that intention, you just turn on the recording. You don't worry now, what am I doing with it? Am I going to make a book? Am I going to make a slideshow? What am I going to do with it? Just the goal is to get the stories, and it can be put together later. So I say that if a picture is worth 1,000 words, a picture plus the words is priceless, because you could have a picture, but if you don't know the person, you don't have the story, there's some connection because that was a grandparent or a family member. So there's some connection, but when you add the words to it and the stories, it's takes on a whole new life. So if we just have that awareness of, oh, there's a story, you don't have to remember it later and write it down. So just record it and then you'll have it. So that's an easy thing for people to do. The other, even less technological than that, is if you have a notepad and you think, oh, I remember when, or, oh, I want to ask grandpa about that, or, oh, my parents once mentioned, and so this story pops in your mind, just have a running list. So when the opportunity comes up and you're like, Mom, I always wanted to ask you about this because you have it on your list and you're not like, you don't have to be at a loss for, well, I want the stories, but I have no idea what to even ask. So
Mm,
those are just simple ways that every day somebody could do that.
awesome. Yeah, I was gonna ask you for tips, but you're just
Uh,
kind of giving all of them out, and that's amazing. So she's a heart-centered individual, and she's just a giver. Let's just put it that way. Here's one of the things that you mentioned, which is the intention, that wanting to. And I usually say that if you truly want to, and somehow it's not happening, it actually comes down to two things. One is support, and the other one is accountability. So
mhm.
if you truly have the desire to actually go ahead and create this and you're resonating with this, you need to find out what kind of support you need. And actually, some of the stuff that Ruthanne has just mentioned is knowledge wise support enough for you to actually have a model that you can actually implement. The other one is accountability. Find somebody in the family that, every week you're just like, so what did you got? Or what did you do? Or did you
Mm.
do the thing that you said you were going to do, and hold you accountable? And, it's just like going out with a workout buddy that that if you don't show up at the gym, they have to do it alone. And because of that, you have to get up out of bed. That goes a long way.
That's one of the tips in my little free
Oh,
download.
there
It's
you
finding
go.
a story buddy, a story buddy. So
I love it. I love it. So, and there is so much information that Ruthanne has shared that I'm going to put in the description. But Ruthanne, what would be a good way for people to connect with you?
So a couple of ways is if you download the document I just mentioned, the 7 no tech, low tech ways to capture family stories starting today, then you will always have access to my tips and all that. So if you go to capturethejourney.com, simple, capturethejourney.com, that free download, you'll see a graphic there. You just request it and then we'll be connected. If
Sure.
you have something that you're stuck on in your own legacy work right now, or you have a milestone, a family milestone coming up, and there's something that is more timely, please reach out to me with an email, Ruthanne@capturethejourney.com, Ruthanne. It's easy to misspell. So Ruthanne@capturethejourney.com, and we can have a conversation about how you can get that done. Because to me, it's not enough for me to just tell you how you can do it. It's really my desire is to help you actually get it done. Not say you're going to get it done, not think about getting it done, but actually creating that family treasure that can become part of your family legacy.
Absolutely. Speaking of support, there's tons of it right then and there. So, first and foremost, guys, if you're doing something else, make sure that you stop or you make a note for yourself to come back to this. This is really important. One of the things that I usually talk about is parents need to role model the behavior for their children instead of preaching to them. So if you role model the behavior that it is okay not to have all the answers, or that you have to do all the heavy lifting yourself or figure everything out on your own, it's okay for you to go ahead and connect to people, that the world is not a big bad place, and there are people that are genuinely interested in supporting you, genuinely interested in making the world a better place. And role modeling that behavior, the kids will be a lot better off, and the next generation of humanity will be that much more empowered. So take the moment, go and check out the description box, because there is tons of stuff that Ruthanne has mentioned. I've put all of it in there, and connect to Ruthanne so that you can start in this journey of creating your legacy, creating your story. And that will be a fun thing with the kids as well. So make sure that you go ahead and create this. Who doesn't love a good story, right?
Yes,
You're
and
wired.
parents can be very intentional again about helping their children. If you have minor children, right? And so now I'm talking about minor children. There are also adult children, but if you have minor children, what a wonderful way to create a family activity, almost like an ongoing process of the grandchild talking to the grandparent, even the adult child asking their parents. And so making it a family affair, so to speak, where it's everybody's doing it together.
everything's much more fun when you do it like that. So
Yeah.
we're here to have fun. So that's what it comes down to. Also, guys, if you haven't had a chance to connect with us, make sure you click subscribe on the channel so you get notification of all the experts that come here, share their passions, gifts, and expertise with you, like Ruthanne has. And Ruthanne, before we finish, any final words?
I would say that be intentional about wanting to do it. And then if you want it, then do it, not to tote the expression, just do it. I know it's not easy to just do it, but I would say if you want it, then don't regret it later. So I'm just going to say, take action, take action.
I love it, especially with some of the older generations that might not be around forever. So it's
Yes.
really important.
And on that note, I have an uncle who just turned 100, and I can't tell you how many family stories I've gotten from him. And I feel like I'm he's the last of that generation. So I feel like I'm the one who's almost has that responsibility to carry all of his generation forward. So
Oh, well said. I appreciate it. Thank you, Ruthanne, for showing up in such a way and taking time out of your busy day to be here with us. And
thank you.
thank you, audience members, with sticking with us. So we'll see you guys on future episodes. Cheers.
Right. Thanks so much, Dr. L.
My pleasure.